All right, so in this video, we're going to take a look at creating a new level and hooking up some scripts and how we can interact with objects in our scene. So here we are inside a lumberyard. I'm going to make a new level, and in this level, I'm just going to call it play because we're going to be playing around this level with different scripts and things like that. I'm going to go ahead and hit OK. Right off the bat, we get our default clean level here, and my console at the bottom, I'm going to right-click and just hit clear, or you can hit Control Shift and C to clear that out. If you go up here to Tools, you can see there's console here. If that doesn't appear, and by the if you look at these different next to each command, you can see there's the hotkey for it. So, for example, if I want to open the material editor, I just hit M. If I want to open the console, you can just hit the tilde key, which is the key to the left of the 1. Now, let's go ahead and create an entity. Now, if you're coming from Unity or Unreal, you think of them as an empty blueprint. Unity, you can think of them as an empty game object. In Lumberyard, we think of them as entities. So I'm going to right-click, and I'm going to go to Create Entity. Now, within this, you can see it's sort of floating in my world. If I want to zoom in on it, I hit Z. Now I'm going to press 2, just kind of bring this entity down to the ground here. You can also see off to the side here, there's a lot of these translation properties. So, for example, my up and down is my Z-axis. So if I zero this out, and then I press Z here, you can see there is my cube. And it's slightly below the floor. And if I look at my default level setup here, you can see that that is not zeroed out either. So now if I zero out my default level, that pertains to the level itself, and then I go and I select this entity here, you can see that it is floating above the ground. So just different ways of looking at the positioning of our different objects. So I'm going to bring that up just a little bit. Let's press Z on that to zoom. There we go. Now it's slightly above my grid. Now if I'd like to make this into a camera, for example, there's a couple ways to do this. I can select this entity, and I'm actually just going to name it camera. You can name it player camera, whatever you like, and then I can add a component here, and I'll just type out camera here, and you can see we get our camera. And if I want to look through selected camera, I can just say be this camera by clicking this button, and now I'm looking through the camera. So let's go ahead and add another entity here. So here's our camera. Let me hit Z to zoom in. So if I right click down here and I create another entity in my scene, let's position this right in front of our camera. And let's say we want this entity to be a box, for example. There is a component that you can add, and it's called a white box. And so if I go to add component here, now if you're running off of the starter set, this is already installed, like the starter game assets. But you can see when I go to white box here and I hit Z to zoom, this is a fantastic way of gray boxing out our scene. And now when I go back to my camera and I click be this camera, you can see there is our white box. Another way of creating a camera, so let's go ahead and select our camera. I'm gonna hit Z again to zoom out. Oops, let's make sure that we return to default camera in our scene. And what's interesting too with our cameras, I can actually switch between them. This viewport camera selector pops up and allows me to select between each one. So let's go ahead and delete this camera that we created. And now I only have my editor camera. So let's say we wanted to create a camera that only, the camera that's essentially viewing from this angle here. All right, so we're looking at this here. Let's make sure we have our editor camera selected. What I can do, and I'm going to use my W key to zoom in a little bit, just kind of panning up. All right, I want to frame my shot or my camera here. I can actually just right click in here and I can select create camera entity from view. Now you can see it created a empty entity called camera 1, and it has the camera component that we had right here. So that's a couple different ways of looking at how to create cameras inside of Amazon's Lumberyard.